Karlsson Price for Thursday, January 30th, 2025, coming to you from the Nation Network studio, built by Arbor Lee, here at the historic Wall Center, downtown Vancouver. In this program, a presentation of Bet365. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets. So, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Matt Karlsson alongside Blake Price. Four-time Juno Award winner Mike Rogerson hitting switches, conducting things with Coach Nick Hauka. We have a big program planned for you after another Vancouver Canucks victory.
All they do is win, win, win.
3 wins.
That's what I said.
Mm-hmm. That was a really fun first period last night, and I thought, wow. Didn't have many expectations for this game. Of course, you've been complaining about their style of play all year. I thought, we might be in for a good one here. It wasn't so good from there.
No.
But the Canucks won.
They did.
Kind of the order of the day, the business of the day. And how about this? You were mentioning to me earlier today how time seems to be moving more quickly as we get older.
Yeah,
that the weeks just fly by.
They are
make you question mortality. Like, wow, how many weeks do I have left in my life?
Yeah.
Can you believe it was 2 years ago today Bo Horvat was traded? In one sense, it seems like, wow, already? In another sense, given what the Vancouver Canucks have been through in the intervening 2 years, in the sense like a lifetime ago.
Yeah, in the sense of time, it feels like yesterday. Mm-hmm. In the sense of what has transpired since, it should be 10 years ago.
That's where we're going on our Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Would you go back and do it again? You can vote yes, you can vote no. Do so at the Karlsson Price X and YouTube channels. And if you are need a reminder on the trade, it was Bo Horvat to the New York Islanders for forward Anthony Beauvillier, prospect Atu Ratu, a first-round pick, and, of course, that first-round pick was later packaged to the Detroit Red Wings for Philip Hronek. So you tell me, Blake, would you do it again?
Well, the equation is then, okay, so what other dominoes fall if you go back and do it again? We'll get Matt back on the screen here shortly. I think what happens in that alternate universe is they probably end up trading JT Miller. And if they trade JT Miller, it's likely to Colorado. It's likely for a package along the lines of Bowen Byram, Alex Newhook, and a second-round pick.
Interesting.
That is what has been put on my table. And if you're doing that, then that satisfies the Philip Hronek itch because you've got Byram instead of Hronek.
Well, you don't have the right shot guy, but...
Right. But you've got another top four defenseman at the very least.
Yeah, you do, but you don't have the guy who's worked so successfully beside Quinn Hughes, but okay.
You maybe don't pull the trigger on Suter when you do. You've got Newhook there. Maybe you...
Yeah, it's so difficult to play those games. But
the most notable thing, though, is... Because you don't have Miller anymore, do you get the best out of Paterson in the intervening years?
Yeah, and of course that's a particularly difficult thing to pin down as well.
Yeah.
So you voted no?
I voted yes. I would go. I'm sorry. I voted no. I would not go back and do it again.
See, I voted yes. I don't dispute you may have gotten more for JT Miller at the time, and I don't dispute you could have staved off some of the drama with Paterson. But for me, and I've said this many, many times, Philip Hronek was the catalyst. Philip Hronek, as much as any player, was responsible for this turnaround we've seen from the Vancouver. A terrific turnaround last year. They absolutely needed that horse right side minute munching defenseman, particularly one that has worked so well with Quinn Hughes, although not of late here. I can understand people looking at it different ways. I have someone in my comments, Malcolm, recognized the account, saying there was a deal with Pittsburgh apparently at the time for a ton of picks for JT Miller. Maybe you could have taken those picks and still wound up with Philip Hronek. Hell, there may have been other defensemen at the time that they were hunting, and maybe one of those deals goes down. But, unless someone can draw straight lines for me on this one, paint the picture that you would have been able to add a play, because let's remember, Ratu's tracking really well in the AHL.
Yes.
Beauvillier returned a pick you wound up using to get Nikita Zadorov. So you have good use. You've gotten good utility out of two of the three elements of that deal, with Ratu still to come. Not to mention, we talked about it yesterday, JT Miller's been a better player than Bo Horvat over the last couple of years. I'm not sure you get to where you got last season if it's Horvat instead of...
Now, Horvat was very good last year. It wasn't JT good,
right.
But he's better than JT this year.
Yep. And he's younger.
You're into the comments already. Trade JT now already. The guy gives away pucks for fun. More on that coming up, because I agree. And then Harshdeep says, hearing Miller's off to Florida in exchange for Sam Bennett and a second-round pick. Well, I've not heard that. And
I'd be surprised. That's Stanley Cup hero Sam Bennett.
And Sam Bennett is on an expiring contract. So unless the Canucks were able to talk with him first, that's an unlikely scenario.
Our friends at Surrey Mitsubishi have put together a special offer for the Karlsson Price audience. If you've been turned down for financing at other dealerships, Surrey Mitsubishi has assigned a dedicated representative, Jessica, who's committed to get you improved through their in-house financing program. Jessica going to assist bad credit, negative equity on your current car. Jessica is going to apply the special program for you, do everything possible to make sure you are approved. Email Jessica at surreymitsubishi.com. Make sure you mention the Karlsson Price program. Some conditions apply. Surrey Mitsubishi, 13820 104th Avenue. Let's get to our top story, brought to you by Yellow Dog Brewing, Neighborhood Brewing, Foolish Winery. Finally streaking and back on a playoff spot. Third modest win streak of the year after a 3-1 victory over the Nashville Predators that jumps them above the Calgary Flames for the final wild card spot. The Flames do have a game in hand. They will make it up tonight at home against Anaheim. The season-high win streak is just 4 games, everybody. You got to go all the way back to October. Florida, Philly, Chicago, and Pittsburgh. The fourth victory happening on October 26th. Of course, they can tie that with a win Friday in Dallas. The only other 3-gamer was the California sweep, San Jose, Anaheim, and L.A. That happened, the last victory there on November 7th. And people are asking, Blake, have they finally put their differences aside, or did Jim Rutherford create so much noise, and Lawrence Gilman mentioned this to us yesterday, that he has galvanized the group? We'll show him. We'll stick it up as, you know what, and play better hockey.
Well, a lot of people pointed out, and I will agree, there seemed to be way more conversation between those two particular players last night on the ice.
Almost like it was for the cameras in some occasions. Now, there's sometimes tactically you're absolutely chatting, and we've seen that a lot from Miller and Paterson, because they're usually on the ice power play as well as
in previous years situations. Yes, but I've been
even this year.
I don't know.
Oh yeah, I've seen them talk some this year.
I mean, they weren't even on the same power play for a long spell this year.
Well, not a long spell.
A few weeks.
No.
So the fact they are back on the same power play, the fact that they lotto-lined it a little bit again last night, it was interesting. It was interesting. Now, neither one of them was spectacular last night. They both get a point.
But effective games.
Paterson's line is the best line out there all
sure.
night long. That's for sure. Miller, his propensity at giving the puck away.
What were the analytics on JT? Was he not very good? Yes.
I didn't look at the analytics, to be honest. But, I mean, late in the game, they're protecting the lead. He fires a puck right onto, it was a tape-to-tape pass out of the right corner to the left point and keeps the pressure alive for Nashville. It's the number one thing that has declined for Miller. The pizza deliveries are constant for JT Miller, and to me, that's a lack of concentration. That's a lack of focus from him. He still got the giddy up, and you see that. There's a couple moments where he slingshots himself on the forecheck, and he's coming in with a barrel of speed. So it's not necessarily a lack of try. It's an easy thing to say when you're in the critic's position. But the focus and the execution, it is not there from JT Miller right now. That's for sure.
Well, let's hear from Coach Tocchet. It has obviously been a very busy and noisy week, and Coach was asked about pushing through the noise last night following the win. Here's Rick Tocchet.
Each individual has to just bring their game, and then collectively as a group, rely on each other. There's a lot of noise, like you said, and sometimes packs of people, positive people, can overcome a lot of outside stuff.
Packs of positive people picking pepper. Love that line from the coach. Do we have positive people now, Rick?
Sounds like an 80s song.
God, it would be something else if we have positive people right now. Imagine what they could achieve if they were positive, Blake.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing.
And I say that because
that is a contagious thing. Like, if they, not at 3 wins, and let's not go crazy over 3 wins.
No.
They doubled it. If you get to 6 straight wins, there's a lot of positivity flowing and a lot of belief.
Now we're cooking. And we say that because it is so much easier to put your body on the line and do the little things when you are positive, when you truly care about everybody else.
And you believe.
On the team,
you believe
exactly.
That if you try, if you go the extra mile, it will result in positivity.
And that others will go the extra mile too, whether
Yes.
it's blocking a shot or taking a hit to eat a puck, all of those things. And we have that discussion because... And I'm hoping it was just forgetfulness. But Linus Karlsson scores his first National Hockey League goal, and no Canuck player on the ice realizes or takes the puck from the linesman. Höglander and Paterson. The linesman's trying to give you the puck.
Linesman's looking around
exactly like,
anybody want this? Or he knew.
Somebody get him the puck. Can't have the indignity of the guy scoring his first NHL goal going and getting it himself.
And at times I make note of the franticness of the veteran on the ice to go get the puck.
Absolutely.
And I sometimes I'm like, just chill. You're going to get the puck, but it's like it will explode if they don't get it in 4 seconds.
It is job number one. They're
Yes.
like, we got to get this puck before the goaltender scoops it out of his net. And then it's down the ice. Then maybe a linesman have it. And then maybe it's back in play. Or then maybe it's out of play and we don't have it marked. And look, I say it's for, I can't imagine it was intentional, but I see people reading things into it. And that's one of the things that this Miller-Paterson business has wrought with the Vancouver Canucks. Oh, is this a room divided? Is it a bunch of individuals out there? And speaking of Karlsson, he's out there protecting a 1-goal lead with 3 minutes left, Blake. Tocchet had mentioned earlier in the season that he liked his board work, and he's going to the net as well. He's getting that net front presence. And Tocchet also liked Nils Höglander's game, praised him again. Beautiful goal from Höglander off the rush, and that all-Swedish line. So let's hear from Karlsson here. Let's give him some shine since he didn't get his puck immediately.
You get Sekeres and Price at least.
Right,
How about
Linus.
that?
Here's the clip, your first goal. How does it feel?
Cool. I waited for that one. It's a great pass by Maisi, and it was so nice to see it go in. It's a good one.
Attaboy.
It was a great pass by Maisi.
It was.
And
who was very good again.
To tell you how good Quinn Hughes is, it's a second assist. And it's not even that spectacular, but what it tells you is his decision-making and selflessness. We've been talking about how amazing he is dragging this team through the mud here the last month and a half, seemingly on his own. He's got the puck at the left.
He's trying to drag
there.
them out of the mud. He is not responsible for them in the
through
mud.
the mud and onto dry land is what I'm saying. Normally, I think he would cut to the middle with that puck and try to take a shot on goal and try to sift it through traffic. There, he sees something different. He's not going to force the issue there, dumps it down to Tyler Myers way down low over here, and Myers makes that fabulous pass across ice.
Like that's a unique goal. You don't see a lot of goals that go in that tic-tac way.
No, especially with two defensemen loaded up on the same side.
Not.
But it's like, yeah, he has to do a lot of the heavy lifting and do most of the work most of the time, but there are times where he'll say, nope, this isn't my time here. I'm going to go down low here to Tyler Myers.
Well, it's becoming clearer and clearer, Blake, that we're watching a hockey savant here.
Yeah.
We are watching someone who sees things out there that very few players see. A chess grandmaster, he's 3 or 4 moves ahead. Those of you old enough to remember Wayne Gretzky, and I know some will get upset that I'm drawing a Gretzky comparison, but the vision and the
elusivity.
The vision and the deft touch and the ability to work in short spaces and get the puck to the appropriate teammate or to the appropriate region or zone. All the things that made Wayne Gretzky such an incredible scorer, because it wasn't physical, right? Wasn't big, wasn't strong. All those things.
Wasn't that fast?
No. Hughes has elements of that in his game. From a different position, his office is never going to be behind the net. But boy, in open ice, the places he gets the puck, either as a puck carrier or as a passer.
No, it's true.
Just game after game after game, you sit there and go, you're watching masterclass after masterclass here. 2 assists. As Jeff notes, he's on pace for a career-best 95 points on the 20th ranked offense in the National Hockey League. Only 2 players in the league have more points than he does since he returned from injury on January 6th. And he's still got that splint on his hand. And with a new partner in Tyler Myers, who has stood out since returning from suspension. And boy, it wasn't that long ago, hearing people scream about Tyler Myers, got to get him off the team. Why is he on this team? You're terrible. So look, everybody, I think we've been clear on this for some time, this show at least. Would you have liked him on a lesser contract than what he wound up getting in the summer? Sure. But if he is appropriately slotted, and by that I mean second or third pair minutes, leading third, not having to rely on him, or now with Quinn Hughes, right? Because there was a time we didn't think he was very good beside Quinn Hughes. Wasn't going to get the most out of Hughes. But the more they're playing together, the better it's looked. So he is still a useful piece for the Vancouver Canucks. Yeah, of course, they could use a better right side defenseman. Of that, there is no doubt. And yes, you can say management screwed that one up in the summer. But Myers can still be an asset, and he has proven that here since coming back from suspension.
I know people loved him 2 years ago, I think.
No, last year.
Was it just last year?
Just last year.
Pardon me.
2 years ago, they were all over him. Last year, he was darn good.
But I honestly think in the last 2 weeks, he's been better than what I saw last year. Just not doesn't erase the first couple months of the season. But I notice him holding on to the puck and making decisions with the puck now that I don't remember him making with regularity last year. And I applaud him for it. It's nice to see, and with his reach and stuff, like it does become a big asset there for the Vancouver Canucks. My question to you now is, there is a common denominator between Philip Roenick and Tyler Myers, and that is Quinn Hughes.
Yes.
If Roenick ends up being really not much away from Hughes,
always so negative.
how do you shuffle it? Like if you get a degraded Philip Roenick because he's away from Quinn Hughes.
Well, you say a degraded Philip Roenick. Do you mean that he is not going to put up points like he did in the early part of last season?
Or be given the space and time to make a first pass. Like, part of the thing is that people are so worried about Hughes, he attracts the attention. Roenick, when he gets the puck alongside Hughes, he's got time and space.
Yeah, he opens up ice. How about that? Itty bitty guy like that, opening time and space for others. We used to say that about big guys,
right?
Look, he has to produce at a certain level because he's your second best defenseman, and so there has to be a baseline of production.
Yeah.
I would like to give it more time to answer your question about time and space and outlet passes and whether he's able to succeed. But if he starts shading more towards a pure defender and you keep the puck out of the net with him on the ice playing alongside Carson Soucy or whomever he's going to play alongside, I'm fine with that.
But it remains to be seen whether that can be accomplished as well.
Well, fair.
Right?
Well, but, so far so good there too. They haven't given up goals here since he split them. Let's get back to that in a second. Demko. Got to get to Thatcher because we were both a little surprised Thatcher got the start there last night. And boy, what an effort from Thatcher Demco.
Different player.
Best game of the season?
Yeah.
Season high 31 saves. Just his fourth win in 13 starts, 3 this month. And a couple of magnificent stops in the first period when this game is, he was hanging in the balance the whole night, basically. But he makes a couple saves in the first period that if he doesn't make them is a totally different complexion. And he acknowledged in the post game, and he even said we had some meetings about getting on a heater here. He acknowledged in the post game this was not just big for the Canucks, it was big for Thatcher Demco.
Yeah, I kind of needed that one. Felt good to be on the winning side here and, feel like myself a little bit again. So always feels good when you win and, a lot to build off.
Just looking at the stats.
Needed that one.
Looking at the underlying stats, Canucks were high-dangered by the Preds 11-8.
Mm-hmm.
The anticipation, there was a couple of passes where they're going side to side, post to post on Demko, and I'm thinking in my mind, okay, this is going to end up in the back of the net. This is, I could just see it coming. And Demko's there. He makes it post to post, makes the stop, reads the play. It was marvelous. I'm looking at the heat map right now. The 5-on-5 heat map is scorching hot. The all situations heat map, even hotter around the hash mark and even below, in between the top of the crease and the hash marks.
Yeah.
Glowing red around Thatcher Demko. And he stops them. Mostly all of them.
Rutherford said this week he'll be okay. He has a lot of talent. He did acknowledge that guys who miss camp often have off seasons or slow starts. I think both of those things are at play with Thatcher Demko, but a lot of runway left. 50 games in the books, 32 to go. And before his recent struggles, they were talking about getting him a run of games and getting him back to the player he is. There is still a world, folks, where you have 2 terrific goaltenders, both of whom with the capacity to steal a playoff series on this Vancouver Canucks team when we get to April.
Yeah.
We'll see. Now, for the last couple of weeks here, and it wasn't that long ago, Blake and I were having some pretty good debates about Rick Tocchet hockey, what it looked like. Blake's position was it's dinosaur hockey, it's low event, it's horrible to watch. My position was tell me how else you can play with this defense that is, having significant troubles transporting the puck. But it was a couple of weeks ago that Rick started talking about, we've asked him to do some things here, basically acknowledging that he was changing things a little bit. A lot of that had to do with getting more shots on goal. You remember we were sitting there bemoaning, look at how few of the shots the Canucks have after one period at the mid-game mark, after the game. Well, they're getting more shots on goal. As a matter of fact, as JPAT notes, 4 straight games here where they've hit double digits in the first period. 5 of the last 6 they've done that. Also, he has gotten back to a more balanced lineup, splitting Hughes and Roenick. Paterson with Karlsson and Höglander. And I mean, on Saturday, I tweeted a joke. Oh boy, that'll get him going. Well, it has. Not everything is perfect there. But let's remember, last year's Vancouver Canucks could rely on 3 lines to score. We talked time and again how good Bluger, Dakota Joshua, Connor Garland as a third line, best third line in hockey, was at generating offensive chances and in some cases even goals. So balanced lines and pairs, more shots, and then defend. It's starting to come together. They score a rush goal last night, and look, I don't think that's going to be a big part of their game. I'm not sitting here thinking any kind of fire wagon hockey is coming. But what I'm starting to see is the underpinnings of a system that led them to such a great regular season last year with a few modifications. And I think that JT Miller mentioned in pregame yesterday, they're breaking the puck out a little better right now.
So
playing more predictable hockey. So look, it's taken a long time and adjusting to a ton of new personnel. And I think, with some truth serum, management would have looked at it and said, boy, we introduced so many bodies there that chemistry wasn't a thing in the early going, and in some cases still isn't a thing.
There's an important step there missing.
But I see progress.
He tried to get more shots on goal. Mm-hmm. What happened was, based on the system that they had been playing under, the shots all ended up coming from the point. It reached a fevered pitch in the first couple of weeks of January where shot attempts went up, but they were all from the point, leading to a litany of complaints of, can somebody please get to the middle of the ice and get a shot on
goal? And
goal?
Rick was mentioning that. Guts to the ice, play inside.
He says
he knew.
He started to say that a week ago, and lo and behold, the last 2 games, and it's not about scoring off the rush, but it's about not giving up the puck when you have it. And what we saw versus the Blues and what we saw in the first 25 minutes of last night's game was the Canucks carrying the puck across the blue line and holding on to said puck without giving it away and allowing the other team to win a board battle and head the other direction with it. And what we saw was sustained pressure in the offensive zone. They're not all off the rush. Just because you've carried it in doesn't mean it's going to be a rush chance or a rush goal.
No. Sometimes it's stop and set up.
Stop and set up.
Yeah.
And they did that. And they hold on. And the poise and the patience of the players when they got over the blue line and it takes one lean. They lean as if they're going to continue. Backs off the defender. All of a sudden, you've got a stick's length of room to make a 2-second decision on where the next pass is going. And you saw them tic-tac-toeing around the offensive zone with regularity. Besser on the end of passes. Garland, the chances were everywhere. Mm-hmm. I mean, they could have had 3 goals in the first period easily. So I hope that sticks around. I hope that this wasn't just a little spike in the graph here, and that they remember that a lot of the players that were here last year, and again, it's not on the rush that we're talking here. We're just talking about, hold on, they were playing with the puck. Let them play with the puck, please.
Shout out and bon voyage to our buddy Dan Cahill from Yellow Dog. He is off on his honeymoon with his better half. They're going to Thailand, Southeast Asia. He was in here dropping off some goods earlier this morning. We always love Dan's visit.
We can tell it's for it's a donation of a gift from my hockey association, my daughter's hockey association fundraiser. So we thank Yellow Dog for taking part in that. And that's just the kind of company that Yellow Dog is. Mm-hmm. Yellow Dog Brewing in Penticton is now open. So as you start to think about your spring wine tours and such in the Okanagan, don't forget about the brews and go to Yellow Dog. Come for the beers you know and love and stay for the handcrafted cocktails and tasty menu items as well. It's open 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. Sunday to Wednesday, 11 a.m. to 10 p.m. on Thursday through Saturday. For the love of dogs, community, and great beer, and of course available in Port Moody as well.
Elliot Friedman reporting that the packages on a JT Miller trade are in hand. It's just about whether the Vancouver Canucks want to make one of these deals. They have had scouts at the Rangers, Hurricanes, and Flyers Devils games this week. Now, it is not in fact, it is quite common if you don't have scouts based in a certain market, to have a scout go in and go through a market where you have multiple teams, like the New York metropolitan area. But of course, we're all on trade watch here, so that gets a little bit of a heightened eyebrow. We talked about it, started tweeting about this Friday after the big Rantanen trade, but it was already known that the Colorado Avalanche have not been too pleased with Casey Mittelstadt this year, and we're looking to upgrade the second-line center position. They even had Rantanen shift over and play some at center ice. You mentioned that a couple of years ago they were talking to Colorado on a package that involved Alex Newhook, the one-time Victoria Grizzly of the BCHL, and Cranbrook's Bowen Byram. So I don't think a modest 3-game winning streak is changing the price of tea in Jim Rutherford's world. He had more to say to Gary Mason, or Gary had more to write based on his interview with Jim Rutherford in the Globe and Mail earlier this week. More on that in a moment. But first, former Vancouver Canucks head coach Bruce Boudreau. He joined our friend Jeff Merrick on the sheet. Jeff will be on the program tomorrow. We missed Jeff last week. He was traveling, but Jeff will be on the program tomorrow. And he's talking about his experience with JT Miller. And this is a guy who was in the room, right? So what was his experience like with JT Miller? Yeah, he acknowledged sometimes JT is a little too much. Here's Boudreau with Merrick.
JT had some talks about him being the sword a little too often. And he understood. And then a lot of times he would watch the video or look at the timesheets on how much ice time he played and say, oh, yeah, sorry, man. Sometimes we forget. Like, he's very hot-tempered, but at the same time, every party was organized by him. Everything that was going on at the house was going on at his house. His kids were always, the first and foremost, like all of those things. But when he gets into a game, there's not too many people I've ever seen that want the right outcome more than him. And sometimes when that's not going as well as it should, it sort of gets bottled up, and then all of a sudden the explosion comes.
Yeah, and I'm not surprised to hear any of that. Hot-tempered, too often the sword, when things go poorly, explosions, but at the same time, organize every team event, right? And that's one of the many things that's at play here. JT Miller is a very social animal with his teammates. Dinners and drinks on the road, boys going out, come over to the house, let's do this, let's get together and do that. Elias is more of a loner. Elias doesn't partake in all these things. I think that's been a tension spot on top of Miller riding him as hard as he has ridden him.
But
as we've long said about JT, when things are going well and you're winning, you love the emotion and the energy and the enthusiasm and the humor and all the JT Miller personality when it's channeled positively and when things are going well. It's just when things aren't going well, you get a guy for whom all of that personality, all that emotion, all of that energy takes on a different tenor.
Now, Bruce is sort of drawing a distinction between the on-ice guy and the off-ice guy. But, there was nothing on the ice that happened here, between Miller and Paterson that was noticeable to the naked eye.
Well, they had that little moment where they
in practice,
yeah.
But ultimately, I think we have to broaden what Bruce is defining as on the ice, hockey-related activities, if you will, because clearly that's where there was a line crossed. That's why Patrick Allvin was talking about getting this guy to be a better person. Remember,
right? That was a very key phrase from Allvin. This will help JT be a better player and a better person.
Talked about needing the dressing room to be a safe space for everybody. Remember we heard that? That goes back a while.
Yep.
They've used that a couple of times now. Mm-hmm. So
This is safe and trust often.
Yeah. So, I don't think it's an accident that
No.
they brought all those sort of terms to the table.
Correct. Rutherford told Gary Mason he warned Paterson upon the signing of the big deal, the $93 million deal, that things are only going to get harder. Told him you have to be more prepared mentally, physically. And Rutherford acknowledges he didn't get to that level coming right out of his contract and into training camp, but now he understands that. And in terms of dealing with the situation, Rutherford said, well, there's no playbook for this, so you don't know if any of us have done everything we can. I'm satisfied that Tocchet has spent as much time as possible on the situation, meeting after meeting after meeting, trying to resolve this. And while I do think Jim had some calculation in what he said earlier this week, because I just can't imagine a wise, sly old fox like Jim Rutherford didn't have some sort of motivation for it. I do believe in part some of it was just the wits' end frustration coming out. Now we have an audience member who is proposing a solution in the Super Chat. And folks, our Super Chat is always open and partial proceeds going to the BC Mental Health Foundation. So if you have something you absolutely have to say, want to get on the show, please enter that Super Chat, make your donation. This is the Blazers fan 22. Do a team survivor vote. Whoever loses gets voted off the island. Sorry, Paterson or Miller. You've been voted out. Please hand in your stick. They're not going to do a team survivor event.
It would be an interesting vote to see, though.
Oh, man. Somebody asked me that yesterday. How many guys are with Paterson? How many guys are with JT? I have no way of knowing. What I do know is that at one point, JT ran in a group with Garland, Hronik, Dakota Joshua. There's some others involved there. A lot of the American guys.
What I would bet, though, is
whereas,
now...
Elias is a bit more of a loner. Like, he's just not a social.
I would bet that right now, everybody's laying pretty low.
Oh, for sure.
To the point where
for sure.
Prior to these 3 wins, I would bet it was a pretty quiet room over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and I think because talking to others, Besser and Myers are the two guys who I think sort of move seamlessly between all cliques and factions of the room, and I think they have a big job right now in terms of helping Quinn Hughes keep all this stitched together because everybody loves Brock and everybody loves Tyler.
And Quinn, I think, yeah. Now, again, this is where the 3 wins are a seedling. They're not anything really that tangible to hold on to, but they are a seedling to contentment and harmony. Not that it prevents moves from happening. I don't think that's a very shallow reading of the situation. Managers are wiser to that. And Rutherford left the door open that they could win their way out of this situation. He held that as an ace up his sleeve, but they still know what's up. Mm-hmm. And they've been burned by patience on this file before.
Yeah.
So
they're not going to fool me.
Yeah.
Twice, 3. We don't know how many times they've been fooled.
The evidence would have to be overwhelming.
I think so.
We're talking about a hell of a 3 weeks, string of wins here.
Mm-hmm.
Not a streak, but you go 12-2. You might have their attention to keep things status quo, but it'll take that.
Now we've seen a uptick in they should have never let Nikita Zadorov go talk this week, particularly after Corey Perry took the liberty with Captain Quinn Hughes, that they don't stick up for their teammates enough, that the vibes aren't good, needless to say. And there were many of us who looked at this and said, that is a big, big loss for the Vancouver Canucks. And we got more information from Rutherford in terms of the dealings with Zadorov and how he wound up in Boston. He said Tocchet would talk to Zadorov and would ask him what would it take to keep him. This while Alvin was negotiating with his agent. Zadorov said $5 million, and they said they would meet his ask. But then Zadorov raised the terms to 6 years, which is the deal he wound up getting from Boston. Rutherford said, quote, same process. We said, okay. So twice in that process, he gave me that one more thing and I'll stay. And then we give it to him and then he goes to Boston.
As Noah Strang pointed out from the Daily Hive, he saves $567K per year in taxes going to the Bruins instead of the Canucks.
Right.
Translates to over $3 million over the life of the contract.
Rutherford said he was mystified that Zadorov felt disrespected, but he acknowledged they missed Zadorov and Cole, and they absolutely do. And everybody at the start of the year who said this team is lesser on paper than the team that ended last year was right. There were a lot of people who were like, no. Cole was really bad as the season went along. And, yep, Ian Cole played much better in the first half of the year. He wore down as an older defenseman. Still makes a better first pass than some of the other guys they've had out this year. Not to mention the intangibles, the leadership that he brought to the room. And, of course, Zadorov as a puck transporter, even with the mistakes that he will occasionally make, still superior. So I do think you take a look at this Vancouver Canucks team this year versus last year and say, okay, what is the principal difference? They spent their offseason money looking to improve goal scoring off that wing at the cost of the talent level on defense, and they've paid a pretty stiff price.
And in the end, I don't know that the goal scoring has gotten any better on the wing overall.
Well, not when Jake DeBrusk goes a full month without a goal.
And Suter, and there's been a lot of droughts. Now again,
Brock isn't on a 40-goal pace, right?
I'll argue that deployment of DeBrusk has reached hilarity levels. Like, come on, DeBrusk was not brought in here to play with Pius Suter.
Mm-hmm.
I think there needs to be a rethink on that.
Ultimately, he wants balance, Blake, and right now it's working. So yeah, you're going to
not for scoring goals.
Well, they won 3 games in a row.
Yeah, I know, but they're not scoring goals. So winning with 970 save percentages is not sustainable. You do have to aim to score more goals than they currently are.
Sure. I mean, they scored 5 against St. Louis, but I hear you. And frankly, some guys have picked up the slack in goal scoring, notably Quinn Hughes. He said his goal was 20. He should absolutely get there on 14. Kiefer Sherwood, who's on IR now, but 13 goals in 47 games. That's very good. I mean, even Suter, I know he went through the horrible drought, but, 13 and 49. And, yes, empty netters, I hear you, but they count too. So, yeah. No, of course, Höglander has been a big drain if you're looking at the two teams side by side. The 4 nations captains have been announced, and Quinn Hughes is not
captain. Is he captain?
Huh?
Quinn Hughes is captain?
Quinn Hughes is not getting a letter from Team USA. Austin Matthews is the captain. The alternates are Matthew Tkachuk and Charlie McAvoy. No JT, huh?
No JT. McAvoy's an assistant with the Bruins, for those wondering.
Yeah.
Not the captain. So you're turning down a captain for an assistant.
Tkachuk is not a captain either.
No.
And Flora. Some Canucks fans are up in arms about all this. I can't say I can muster any outrage here, in part because it's Team USA. Like, I'm for Canada. If they want to name a lesser leadership group, have at it, Bill Guerin. Have at it, Team USA. You know what? If y'all want to infight like you did in Nagano and other places in best-on-best tournaments, I'd be A-okay with that.
I have to remain steadfast in my assertion. Letters don't mean much.
Fair.
If you're a leader, you're a leader. You're not going to.
Yes.
Quinn Hughes is not going to stop himself from saying something in that room because he doesn't have a letter.
Well, especially since he's Huggy Bear, right? Like, he seems like he's good buddies with half the team. In the offseason, you see Quinn Hughes with all these other top-end American players working out at the lake, wherever.
It's mildly curious, though.
It is a little.
You got the reigning Norris Trophy winner. Who
is a team captain.
Yes.
And in a Canadian market, too, right? Yeah. Like, with all due respect, like the captain in Carolina or Nashville or Dallas, it's a higher bar in Canada.
How about the Canadian controversy? Is there any controversy there?
Well, Sydney's the captain. McDavid and McCarr are the alternates. I was a little surprised Makar over McKinnon, but I guess they want a defenseman as well.
And no baton pass. They're going to give Sidney one last chance to be the captain, you think? Or is he the captain for the Olympics as well?
Sidney Crosby is the captain until the day of his last game in a Canada sweater. Sidney Crosby is undefeated as a captain of Team
With
Canada.
surprisingly few kicks at that can, though.
Well, but we haven't had best on best for a number of years. Sidney's 3-0 as the captain of Canada. They won all 3 tournaments where he is captain the Canadian.
Was not captain in 2010, by the way, if you're thinking that's one of them, folks. Mm-hmm. 1 Worlds, 1 World Cup,
Just
and
scored the
1 Olympic gold.
biggest goal since Henderson or Lemieux.
Yeah, no controversy. I think you're a winner whether or not you have McDavid or Crosby wearing the C, but it's an
but honestly,
choice.
Sidney is at a state, Blake, where if I could see, hey, Connor, what do you feel about turning the captaincy over to you? Fuck no, Sidney Crosby is our captain.
No, for sure. I could see that answer from
I could see every player in that Canadian room saying, no.
Yeah.
So long as 87's here, he's the captain.
There's proof of concept.
Period. Point final.
Yes.
Yeah. So, and I was thinking more about Four Nations, and of course, we'll be at Greta on February 15th.
Said nobody. Okay, go ahead.
We'll be at Greta February 15th for Canada versus the United States, everybody. Come join us. Tickets at nationgear.ca. More on this in a second.
I'll think about the Four Nations when the Four Nations is here. You're thinking about the Four Nations already?
Well, yeah, because there's been a lot of news on it this week. So,
okay.
People pulling out, people getting hurt and missing the tournament, captains named, Barkov, Finland, Hedman, Sweden. And I want to, and despite the fact he's chiding me here, I do have to give him credit because I believe he mentioned this at one point when the Four Nations was first announced. Because of the absence of Russia and the format here not including the larger world, the Russians, the Czechs, the Slovaks, and others, if you wanted to add others, I think they missed an opportunity here. And with all due respect to Sweden and Finland, who are great hockey-playing nations, and yes, win their fair share, in Finland's case, punches above its weight class and are worthy rivals for Canada and the United States in international hockey. Investment in the tournament, I certainly haven't felt it to a large degree yet. I wonder if they would have been better off playing a best 2 of 3 or a best of 5 Canada versus the United States to really get some of that dislike happening between the 2 North American rivals heading into next year's Olympics.
I think
like they did with the World Cup way back when, right? Remember that was a 2 out of 3 finale.
Yeah, I mean, I just wonder what the rest of the players would think. Would they feel left out?
No,
would they,
well, I mean,
would they cherish the break?
You've got some players like Kucherov who have felt left out and
Yeah.
had his little temper tantrum at the All-Star game last year. And I don't dispute there would have been some Finns and Swedes who have been, a chance to wear the jersey and play best on best hockey.
Resurgent Czech and Slovak programs that probably feel like
you were already
returned.
leaving guys on the sidelines as well.
Yeah.
And I think there would have been a lot of Swedes and Finns that would have been great. Let's head to Mexico. Wife and kids will be, really pleased here that, daddy's got some time during the season and we can go and do. I think a Canada-USA series would have been the way to go.
Calvin in the chat, what type of rink is it going to be played on? I hope it's an international
Well,
rink.
it's Boston and Montreal, so no.
And there's no such thing as international rinks anymore. Like they exist in the world, but the international game, the Olympic game, is officially back onto North American size ice surfaces.
So come watch with us at Greta. It's presented by Fountain Tire, Canada versus the United States, February 15th. Greta Bar 50 West Cordova. We've got raffles with exclusive prizes to be won. This is all in support of the Social Run Club, YVR, and thank you to all of them for partnering with us. Tickets are $10. If you want the VIP package, it's $40. You get a burger, you get a beverage, you get a game card for the arcade. Seating up to 6 people on the VIP package. Doors at 4, puck drop at 5. It's a 19-plus event. Grab your tickets, nationgear.ca. We'll talk to JPAT, then we'll talk to Rob Williams. Cover a lot of ground with Rob today, actually. And then more on the Whitecaps losing Stuart Armstrong. And our intern, Nick, Coach Nick, is going to join on the show as well here. He's got a connection to Farhan Lalji.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Stay tuned for that. Time now for our Bet365 bets of the day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365, partner here with Sekeres and Price. Did not get a win yesterday. So, go ahead, Blake. What do you... Oh, wait a second. I did get a win. Mike, I had Höglander to score, didn't I? No. Okay. I had DeBrus to score. Go ahead.
Yeah, DeBrus doesn't score.
I know. He doesn't score.
I had Paterson, so I too didn't. But I'll get you one here.
Mm-hmm.
The Los Angeles Kings are in a bad way. Their last 10 games looking very Canuck-like, or what we have come to know the Canucks to be like. 3 wins in 10. They've lost 5 of their last 6.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they haven't been very good.
And it's really put that number 3 slot in the division back in play. So, do you become a Tampa Bay Lightning fan tonight? Yes, you do.
Yeah, you sure do.
-1.5.
Did you mention they lost to Florida yesterday, 3-0?
Yeah. Get the empty netter, -1.5, suits you just fine. Plus 170 for the Lightning to take down the struggling Kings on the road.
It is getting down to brass tacks time for John Tortorella and the Philadelphia Flyers. They are 52 points in 52 games. They're technically a point ahead of the New York Islanders, but the Islanders have 3 games in hand and have won 5 in a row. And, of course, both of those teams are chasing quite a large pack. Rangers, Habs, Red Wings, Blue Jackets, all the way up to Tampa sitting on the final Eastern wild card. 5 games in a row is probably just about right for the New York Islanders. You're getting value with Philly as a home dog here against a direct competitor. Plus 120. Give me Torts and the Flyers. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code NATION when opening that account. Jeff Paterson coming up next. Harrison Price from the historic Wall Center.
And if you've been tempted, if you've been dipping the toe into the electric vehicle market, it's time to dive right in, folks. And do it with the brand that has been doing it since day one of the electric vehicle revolution, the Toyota brand. You know how everybody brags about, oh, my Toyota, I drove over 400,000 kilometers. Yeah, do it in an electric vehicle.
Reliability.
BZ4X is the name of the newest electric option in the Toyota lineup. 100% electric, so yes, drive in the HOV lane to your heart's content, pass all those gas stations as well, and also have the room to do exactly what you need. All the cargo space to take this to Whistler, to put the golf clubs in as well. Take one for a test drive. You'll fall in love with the fabulous space-age cockpit, all the bells and whistles that you expect and desire in a modern car. You can get one now with $12,000, over $12,000 in rebates and incentives. You can finance one from 0.19% APR for 36 months. Visit shoptoyota.ca or go take one for a test drive. Fall in love at your local Pacific Toyota dealer today.
Here's Jeff Paterson of RinkWide Vancouver, our Canucks reporter, after a 3-game win streak for the Vancouver Canucks, one off the season high. They have 2 modest win streaks on the season. Jeff, how are they getting it done? What have you seen as a common bond between these wins over Washington, St. Louis, and now Nashville?
Well, just listening to Blake there talking about the BZ4X, and look, the Canucks have that new car smell all of a sudden, right? They're driving off the lot. Look out. Full tank of gas, and there's no stopping them now. I think there's a couple things. They haven't trailed on this win streak. They have opened the scoring in the first period of all 3 games, and it is remarkable what a difference it makes when you're not constantly chasing, and that happened so much in the first half of the season. Get down. We know that offense is still a bit of an issue for this group, and so I think it's freeing them up a little bit. The other part, guys, is the other end of the ice. 3 wins. They've given up 4 goals total in those 3 games. You do that, you're going to win more often than not. So held the Capitals to 1, St. Louis got 2, and Nashville got 1, and here they are on a 3-game win streak, and we'll see if they can push it to 4 in Dallas on Friday night.
I'm going to downgrade them to a nice pre-owned because while the first period was great, first few minutes of the second, fabulous, their ability to protect the lead was... Thatcher, can you do this for us, please? Not exactly nursing home the lead like we've seen, the President's Trophy winning teams of years gone by do so. Now, I'm not going to be too critical on that because, Jeff, that's how much I like the first period. And again, those first few minutes of the second as well, where they carried the puck in across the blue line, Jeff, where they held on to the puck and didn't make I'm holding a hand grenade play with the puck as well. Like, they proved, I hope, to the head coach that they are capable of playing some offensive hockey.
Yeah, it's not a perfect performance by any stretch of the imagination, but there was a lot to like in the first period. I'm with you there. 13 shots on goal. I think it's 4 straight games, 5 of the last 6 that they've reached double digits in shots. Remember, it wasn't that long ago where, when was the last time this team got to double digits in shots in a first period? Well, it does feel like they're coming out of their thaw a little bit here now. And, man, there was a lot to like in that first goal. The fact that, they went to the attack, some pretty dynamic puck movement. We talk about Quinn Hughes, and you run out of superlatives, and then you see a play like that where, like, the pass, whatever. I mean, it's a Quinn Hughes pass. He puts it on the tape of Nils Höglander. But I just love the fact that he recognizes in the moment, inside his own blue line, that there's a turnover and they're going to the attack and there is no hesitation. Like, he is jumping into the rush at that point. And when he does, and he has the puck, good things happen. Elias Paterson gets an assist. Linus Karlsson is all of a sudden becoming this screen machine. Like, he's the guy in front of the net there. And how about Höglander deking Roman Josi, of all people, like, out of his jockstrap down to the ice and creates enough space there to get a shot away. So, 4 of the 5 guys on the ice involved in that play, making good things happen. You're right, though. Like, why can't they? Like, they got the 2-1 lead and then basically just parked the bus and against better teams, and there are a lot of them in the National Hockey League. I know the Preds have been better in January, but there are much better, stiffer opponents out there. We've seen it, that it's come back to bite the Canucks. So, yes, you'd think that they've learned their hard lessons by now. I don't know. But yes, more of the first period, a little bit less of what we saw in the second, and then the third really holding on and having to kill off penalties and all those types of things. But the through line there is that, hey, Thatcher Demco needed a performance like that. He delivered. Once they got to 2-1, there wasn't much in the way of offense in the Vancouver Canucks. That's like all high leverage hockey for Thatcher Demco with a 2-1 lead over the course of the final 40 minutes. No margin for error. He got a little help from post and a crossbar, but that's all right. Otherwise, he did his part, and he gave them the saves that he hasn't been giving them in those big moments. So season high for him, 31 saves on the night, and certainly you hope it's something to build off of.
Different player.
Yeah, I mean, he makes a couple of terrific saves in the first period when the game is very much in doubt. I've got to ask you how nobody went to collect the puck for Linus Karlsson's first goal, Jeff.
I wish I had an answer for you. The video evidence is not flattering.
No.
On the part of the linesman scoops it up, tries to hand it to Nils Höglander, who's like, I got my 4th of the season already tonight. I don't need to be doing the heavy lifting here for anybody else. And then Elias Pettersson's right behind him, and Paterson sort of waves him off as well. Like, I don't get it, because they had to know it was the guy's first NHL goal. So, yeah, I mean, a little levity, and we can laugh about it now, but bottom line is he got his puck, and that part's good, and so was the goal. I liked a lot about the goal. But, yeah, I mean, I'm really curious how usually somebody's in there fishing right away to get the puck and make sure that you get the souvenir.
Especially a veteran, and you're laughing, but there are others going, see, they don't care about each other. They're not playing for each other. They don't even pick up the puck for the poor
As we pointed out earlier, Jeff, they have done that this season. Is it just a brain fart city here that not even people on the bench seem to be yelling about it?
No.
Is it, or is it... Is it an indicator of exactly where we've come at this point in the season? Because, again, it did happen earlier in the year where they were on these, because there's been a lot of rookie goals here.
Look, there's a lot of stuff that has gone on this year and this week, but we should not lose our manners here as Vancouver Canucks. You get the puck for the rookie.
Is it a symptom, Jeff?
I can't go there. I mean, 3 Swedes. Höglander, it wasn't that long ago that he was scoring his first in the National Hockey League. He was the one that surprised me, because I think he and Karlsson are probably buddies on some level, and certainly line mates and teammates. So I'm going to call it an oversight. Again, just kind of like the 3 stars in the building, and we had some fun with that on RinkWide last night. There were a few things that didn't make sense at Bridgestone Arena, and that was clearly one of them. But you're right. Like, when you think of the guys, Karlsson becomes the 6th player to score for both Abbotsford and Vancouver this season. So it says something about the developmental system and the fact they're getting some production here. But, Max Sasson scored his first. Archie Baines got his first of the season.
Lekramaki
here.
Lekramaki.
Exactly. Yeah. So you're right. They've gone through this drill on a handful of occasions and got it right in the past. And I don't know what went on. Not there. But, it would have been kind of a funny question to put to either Höglander or Paterson after the hockey game.
You mentioned the superlatives for Quinn Hughes. He should have had 2 goals last night, too. Like, I mean, he continues to stake his claim to a Hart Trophy campaign, doing just what you talked about there, just seeing the opportunity for a quick rush the other way. Him leading the rush on multiple occasions here, Jeff. Like, the guy literally has the team on his back. Not literally, I know, Matt. You know what I mean.
Day to day with a back injury.
Yes.
Way too much.
I think he could do it. I think he could do it literally.
Look, you were gone skiing last Friday when I sat in for you. Fortunately, we've burned all of the digital evidence, but I said to Matt that it was probably time to park the Quinn Hughes for Hart discussion, with all due respect to Quinn Hughes, but it was more that if this team doesn't get to the playoffs, I still hold on to this. Like, Quinn is playing at a Hart caliber level. I want to be 100% clear on that. But if they don't make the playoffs, like, what are we doing here as a league if you're handing out the single biggest individual award to a guy on the 19th place team? Like, how can that make sense? Like, there's a lot of things about the NHL that don't make sense, but that one to me, and again, people fall into the strict definition of most valuable to his team. I've never really liked the wording there, but if that is the wording, then it is impossible to find a guy that is more valuable to his team than Quinn Hughes to the Vancouver Canucks right now. And I pointed it out on X after the hockey game. On pace for 95 points as a defenseman on a team that is 20th in the National Hockey League in offense right now. There are only 2 players in the league that have more points since he returned from his injury in early January. And guys, he's doing all of this with the hand, still with the splint or the apparatus on it. Like, he's not 100%, but his game is 100%. And you just marvel at him on a nightly basis. So they're back above the playoff bar. Let the conversation about Quinn for Hart begin again.
Yes, we burned the digital evidence. Jeff was ending the Hart campaign. I think he was also done with Linus Karlsson last Friday, but my memory's a little foggy on that one. On that one as well, Jeff. Hey, I know he talked about Tocchet's style of hockey, and he has been most critical this year. But a few weeks ago, Jeff, during that Eastern road trip, I want to say after the Montreal game, but it could have been later, Tocchet talked about we're trying to change the way we play here a little bit. And he mentioned shots on goal, to your stat about how often now they're getting more than 10 in the first period. A couple weeks later, looks like it's taking a little bit more root. But also, guys, last year, one of the great things about the Canucks was balance. They had 3 balanced lines. They had balanced defense pairs, even with Hughes and Hronek playing together, because they had more depth and talent in the second and third pairs. It looks like balance is back in a big way with these Canucks, Jeff.
Certainly, that's the idea behind what Rick Tocchet is doing. But as I look on paper, I don't love Jake DeBrusk with Pius Suter. Jake DeBrusk has gone 11 games without a goal. Pius Suter, I know he scored an empty netter and he scored in 2 games, and you hope that that's some sort of offensive awakening, but he hasn't been any kind of playmaker. Certainly for a guy that was brought in DeBrusk to score all these goals for you. Now, Jake, we know he's streaky, but this is his longest streak of inactivity. So I don't love that combination. I don't like the fact that Danton Heinen has somehow found his way back to the top 6 and on a line with JT Miller and Brock Besser. And look, great story, and I love guys scoring their first NHL goals. And Linus Karlsson's been way better on this call-up than any previous one. So something seems to have clicked here, seems to be figuring it out, get to the front of the net, even his play on his goal, where he kind of gets lost in the crowd and, makes himself available for a terrific pass from Tyler Myers. But you've got Elias Pettersson, $11.6 million Elias Pettersson, and you start the game last night. Höglander's got 3 on the season, and Linus Karlsson didn't have a point in the National Hockey League. So, the idea is balance, but I'm not sure that, there's a flaw on every line, it feels like. But again, if they're defending as well as they are and they get in the kind of goaltending, then you don't need as much offense as perhaps you think you did or you required earlier in the season when they were giving up a few more goals. So I think they're going to keep pushing along here with this sort of approach. But again, I just... is Dakota Joshua going to be a 4th line guy? Is he going to launch at any point? Will he work his way up higher in the lineup? And Kiefer Sherwood, I think, at some point is going to get back in here. He's the only injured body right now. So there are some pieces that they can inject at some point. But just in the here and now, wins are good. The vibe is better. But I don't know that every issue is solved based on the deployment that they're running with right now.
All right.
By the way, criticism of Paterson is often... he doesn't elevate the players around him. He seems to be doing okay with these 2 guys that don't exactly have thick resumes. The other kudos I want to give out is Tyler Myers, who continues to play pretty darn well. That is some vintage Tyler Myers here over the last couple of nights. And I mean vintage like Buffalo Sabres vintage, like holding on to the puck, making plays. It's been pretty good from the big man, and I think this is the first on this show, Matt. I don't think I've ever said, boy, is Tyler Myers playing good, but he's playing very well.
Yeah, and to hear Rick talk about how hard he worked during the 3-game suspension that didn't put his feet up, and I'll catch you on the other side here, put in the effort and was ready to go when the suspension was over. And we've said it all. True pro through and through, right? Nobody has ever questioned this guy's professionalism. He was making too much money on the last contract. That's the biggest knock on him, and that's not his fault at all. But at $3 million right now, dare I say he's a value contract, which is a pretty wild swing given just the way that he was viewed here in this market for the duration of that last contract. But I like the fact, sort of to come back to your question, Matt, about what's different or what's going on, right? Like Hughes and Hronek split. Quinn Hughes has shown it doesn't matter who he plays with. So if you've got Tyler Myers at or near the top of his game, he can hold up his end of the bargain there. That allows Hronek to drop down. Derek Forbert's just a veteran presence. There's no flash there, but I think he's been more than capable. And then Carson Soucy drops down to a 3rd pair. Given the kind of season he's had, I'm okay with Soucy in a 3rd pair capacity. But I do think that splitting Hughes and Hronek, Tyler Myers has been a piece of that puzzle that's allowed them to do it. And the proof is that they're not giving up many goals, and they're starting to win some hockey games here.
Okay, our first opportunity to talk to you since Jim Rutherford set the world afire earlier this week. Jeff, what did you make of the president's comments about the Miller-Pettersson matter?
Yeah, like everybody. I thought this market was going to be glowing after a 5-2 win in St. Louis, where they did a lot of good things. I thought that was going to be the talk. Back-to-back wins for the first time in a while, and, of course, wake up to those comments. So, the first thing that jumped out at me was once and for all, just putting it as clearly as possible that, yes, this is a rift that exists And beyond that, says that it's a rift that cannot be solved, that the fact that they've tried, and he thought that several times that they had moved past, and yet it just continues to come full circle here. So there was a ton to dive into there. This idea, I guess as I read through it, and I thought it was just going to continue to be about JT and Elias Paterson. And when Quinn Hughes' name was invoked later in the article, that one made me sit up. Now, I get that the quote was, "We want him here forever," but if we're tearing this thing down, he's got to go as well. That's a pretty inflammatory comment from the president of hockey operations. So one of the things that really surprised me, I guess, guys, was the contrast. That the week earlier, Patrick Allvin stood in there, answered questions for 20 minutes, talked, but didn't really say much. But what he did say was, the adversity's behind us. I'm backing this core. I believe in this group. And when I said, "Do you think this is a playoff team?" he looked me in the eye and he said, "Yeah, I think we're a playoff team." A week later, Jim Rutherford comes out and says, "We can't be competitive with this group, that, we've come to that conclusion that essentially it has to be stripped down." So look, messaging hasn't been their strong suit for a while now. And I think this was just another indication of that, where Patrick Allvin was trying to make sure that he didn't fan the flames. Jim Rutherford was like, "Yeah, forget that. I'm coming out both guns a-blazing here." And so, it's still reverberating in the market. It took me back to the days when Jim Rutherford went on the Right Shoulder Radio and blasted Bruce Boudreau, didn't hold back then. And obviously change came shortly after that. And here we are a couple of years later. The funny part in that was, remember, he said what he said about Bruce Boudreau on the radio. Then when they hired Rick Tocchet, Jim Rutherford said, "I got to stop talking. I got to stop talking." And he did for a little while, but ultimately couldn't help himself here, I suppose. And it was an incredible read. Like, good for Gary Mason to get those sort of quotes. And then obviously there was still more in the chamber.
Oh my God, notebook dump.
That part was incredible as well.
Yeah, talking about Zadorov, and it sounded like
Demko and others.
They're pointing fingers at Zadorov, saying, "No, we did everything he said to do, and he didn't want to come." By the way, you mentioned Boudreau did the podcast tour yesterday again, and I think this has been said once before, but he really put it in lights this time that they on multiple occasions tried to turn Quinn Hughes into a center from management, and he was like, "I'm not doing that." That's startling to hear from the former Canucks head coach.
Yeah, I listened to the entire episode, and you're right, Bruce has made the rounds. He's said what he has said a lot of times, but I thought it was just a fascinating sort of reveal of his time here in Vancouver, some of the behind the scenes things that I hadn't heard him talk about, just in terms of planning and preparation for a season, and some of the interference that he felt upper management was running on his plans, and sort of who he trusted in there and who he didn't, and all those. So it's out there. If people want to look for a different podcast alternative, you might want to check out. I thought it was pretty revealing, and just some things that talked about how valuable he thought Tanner Pearson was in the locker room, which was something that Tanner's bro through and through. But when I looked at the makeup of that roster then, he's not a guy that I thought was kind of the peacemaker in that locker room necessarily, but Bruce really kind of went out of his way to point out how much and how valuable he thought Tanner Pearson was in that role for that locker room.
Well, we'll see if it can be 4 in a row for only the second time all year. Friday in Dallas. Jeff's got you covered with RinkWide Vancouver. And Jeff, we'll catch up on S&P here on Monday. Thanks for this, bud.
Yeah, just a couple of quick things. I'm sure you guys have talked about. They catch a bit of a break. You hate to see good players out, but Miro Heiskanen now ruled out, and possibly for the Four Nations as well. That's a blow. Obviously for Dallas in the short term, but for Team Finland. The other thing, guys, is if they can get a result out of Dallas, they get the Detroit Red Wings in on Sunday. It's a 5 o'clock start, first and foremost, so a bit of an odd start. The Wings are the late game on Hockey Night on Saturday in Calgary. So they play the late game, quick turnaround with travel.
Wow.
And
losing
probably getting your their backup goaltender. It'll be 3 and 4 for them after the trip starts in Edmonton. So an opportunity. And remember, they've knocked off the consecutive wins with Washington and St. Louis, but the quest continues for those consecutive home ice victories. Got the first leg with the Washington Capitals. Detroit stands. The Red Wings are what stand between the Canucks and the first consecutive home ice wins.
And no sympathy for the Wings, okay? That was a 9 a.m. Pacific start in Detroit earlier this season, if you remember.
It's true.
12 local
It was a
time.
fun game. Jake DeBrusk got a hat trick.
It sure
They
was.
won in overtime.
Absolutely. Play that game again.
Yeah.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right, have a great weekend, guys.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
Karlsson Price from the historic Wall Center. This next segment brought to you by the HSBC Rugby Sevens. The party is coming back. One of the best parties annually in this city and celebrating 10 years at BC Place. The HSBC Rugby Sevens go from February 21st to 23rd. Grab your friends, your fancy dress, 12 women's teams, 15 men's teams. 3 full days of jam-packed rugby and partying. Of course, Canada represented on both sides of the bracket. Single-day tickets are now on sale. Friday tickets start from $45 plus fees. And for the fan that wants to cram all the fun into one day of partying, you can enjoy the next-level rugby experience of VIP tickets. $130 a day, giving you the best seats in the house, player access, a private bar and lounge, in-seat food and beverage service. Tickets on sale now at vansevens.com.
I feel like the rugby teams there are sort of like our Canadian alpine skiers, that they don't necessarily do amazing week after week, but in the big moments. And at home, they often do pretty well. So go check it out.
It's a really fun event if you haven't been in the past. Here's Rob Williams, the national sports editor of the Daily Hive and its offside sports vertical, who joins us on Thursdays. Rob, how are you?
Doing great, guys. My favorite thing to do at Rugby Sevens when I've covered it is you walk on the concourse about 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock on the Saturday. Just carnage. It's an unbelievable walk. You just go down there, do a loop of the stadium. It's a sight to see.
Of course, you're only speaking about the costumes, right, Rob?
Yes.
Nothing more. Hey, we got some Canucks topics to get into here, and then I want to get into one Canuck adjacent topic. We were all concerned when we saw the Daily Hive story about Juggy, but first, lots happened this week. Just your take on what we heard from Jim Rutherford, and whether you think it's constructive, whether you think it's lit a fire, or whether you think it's previewing something to come before the March 7th deadline.
I think the lens we were viewing this from would be a lot different if it wasn't Jim Rutherford, if it wasn't a Hockey Hall of Famer, if it wasn't someone of his stature that has his sort of experience. If this was like a rookie GM or somebody that hadn't had any success, I think people would really just be like, "What? Like, this guy hasn't got a clue about what he's doing. Like, what the heck are you doing? Coming out and saying all this, and even just everything else that we've seen up to this point." And there is, a lot of criticism, even given what Jim Rutherford has done in his career. But I think there's people there, and I'm kind of the same. Like, okay, this seems like it must be a calculated move. Is it a calculated move? Just seems really bizarre at this point now, just to be getting it all out in the open. I mean, I guess you might as well at this point. Like, I mean, he didn't really say anything that we didn't know. He just said the quiet parts out loud, the parts that you don't normally hear from an NHL executive. Basically, it was almost like waving the white flag on this. Like, okay, we've tried, we've done all we can, we give up. We're gonna have to take probably a crappy return on this and get what we get.
I wholeheartedly agree. If it's a young, inexperienced GM, people are probably really critical of this, saying he doesn't know, he's out of his depth, he doesn't know what it's like to do this at the NHL level, et cetera, et cetera. But
he's panicking.
Yeah, but Rutherford
might be planes flying around with banners right now.
Exactly. I wonder, in the way, I don't know if you saw, like, your comments from last week's hit got a lot of traction about the city being done with the core. Does Rutherford's interview, amplify that even more, do you think? Do you think people get even more now done with it? The fact that it's verified now, there's the blue check mark beside the drama, if you will?
Yeah, I had some pushback on that clip. But I mean, I think what I mean is like they're done with seeing this core fail. Like, I don't think people can see this core flop again. I don't think they're done with each individual player. Like, obviously Hughes is the most popular player on the team, and he's having an unbelievable year. And I think there's still love for guys like Besser and Thatcher Demco and et cetera. I think, obviously it's Miller, it's Paterson. People are really fed up with both of those guys for good reason. I don't think that they necessarily have to blow it up and send both guys out of town, but I think that feeling is rising. But yeah, like can they? I think that there's some of this core is salvageable. I don't think they have to send every last guy out the door, but seeing this group falter again in the way that they're doing it this year is just. It's just really hard to watch because we've just seen it time after time after time. And I think it's to the point now where, given Rutherford's comments, like they have to do something different.
Yeah, I think you're right. Of course, they keep up the winning. I think they'll be less sick of the core. A couple of Bo Horvat questions we want to ask you here. Including the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question 2 years ago today. Horvat to the Islanders for Beauvillier, Ratu, and a first-round pick. We're asking, if you could go back, would you do it again, Rob?
It's funny because, 2 months ago, absolutely yes. I think Hronek filled a need. They had the three centers. They traded from a position of strength. And filled a position where they were really weak. So in that way, yeah, I think absolutely you have to do it. But, hindsight being 2020 now, I mean, if you were going to trade one of the guys, you needed to trade Miller. And I do think if you look back on it now, do you do the Horvat deal? I guess it depends what you could have gotten from Miller. Could you have gotten someone comparable? Like, could you have filled that Hronek need? I mean, I don't know the offers at that time. You probably could have come pretty close, right? I know that, the reports at the time where they weren't necessarily in love with the offers they were getting from Miller at that time. But I mean, they're really not in love with the offers they're getting for him right now either. So I think with the benefit of hindsight, I think, yeah, it probably was a mistake. I think they probably moved the wrong guy. And that's hard to say because Miller was so fantastic last season, but given the dynamic, I think that was a miss. I think Rutherford's admitted as such that they thought that they could fix this. They thought this would blow over. It hasn't, and now they've got a real mess on their hands. This season's gone off the rails because of it, and who knows how long it'll set them back now if they have to accept an underwhelming return for Miller.
Now the pure hypothetical. We asked Frank Corrado this yesterday.
They wrote about it at Daily Hive too.
Would you trade 1-for-1 here, Miller for Horvat?
I would. I mean, what are they getting back for Miller? Like, are they like, I guess
apparently not
depends.
apparently not even Hedel first in a prospect from the Rangers.
Exactly, right? So like, what are you getting back? Like, their contracts are very similar. Horvat makes $500,000 more per season. Horvat's getting paid till he's 36. Miller gets paid till he's 37. I think I would. I mean, I think he works in that dressing room. I don't think given how incredible of a player Quinn Hughes is, I don't think it would be uncomfortable bringing back a former captain into that room. I don't think it would be like, who's the real leader here? I think like it's Hughes's room now, unquestionably. So I don't think that would be a problem. That he would fit in with his teammates. Is there too much history with management? There's some hard feelings there. So maybe, who says no? Maybe Horvat says no because he doesn't want to come back and play for these guys that probably in his eyes lowballed him the last time. Yeah, I'd take him, and you develop Paterson into the matchup guy. We know Horvat's not that two-way stud that we thought he was going to be coming out of junior, but he's still, he was a good soldier in Vancouver. He can score. We know he's great on the power play, and he does a lot of good things for a team. And I think he'd be a really good second line center.
We gathered last Thursday at Greta for a watch party, and someone who's there because he attends a lot of our watch parties, and we absolutely adore him, not just on the ice singing the anthem at Rogers Arena, but in person and getting a chance to interact. Saw your tweet and story about Juggy yesterday, Juggy Bajwa, the anthem singer for the Vancouver Canucks. Give us the update there. What happened, and how's Juggy doing?
Yeah, he was hit by a car near Main Street, Science World SkyTrain station, crossing Quebec Street. Just a woman was helping him cross the street. Someone he didn't know, just met, that offered to help him. Sounds like someone that wasn't really paying attention. He sounds like the driver was turning right, was maybe looking down at their phone. Maybe the sun was in their eyes. He had a couple of excuses, apparently. The driver showed remorse, apparently. But, they were both, he's obviously was pretty rattled by it. They both went to hospital. He wasn't there long. Like, it sounds like he's going to be okay. But he did, it sounds like, maybe a concussion or something to that effect. Like he said, he was feeling a little bit dizzy. But otherwise, seemingly okay. The woman he was with was hurt worse than he was. So, but she's now out of hospital. But definitely a scary situation for anyone.
Yeah.
But I can only imagine, being a blind person and all of a sudden you're hit by a car. I mean, that's right. A very, very scary situation.
Well, it's funny because he had to leave our party early last week, and it was quite busy there at Greta. I said to him, Juggy, you going to be okay? And he said, Matt, if you could help me out of the bar, just because I know there's a lot of people here, that would be great. So I helped him out of the bar. We got onto the street, and I said, you going to be okay for here? Oh, yeah, no problem. Straight shot down a waterfront station. Do it all the time. And the note he sent me yesterday is that he bruised up his elbow, feeling a little dizzy still. And he said he crossed that intersection all the time, like he is most independent. So anyways, Juggy, we know you're watching and listening. All the best to you. Look forward to seeing you at our next event or whenever our paths may cross. And glad to see that you guys were doing that story yesterday, Rob.
Last bit of business. Just if I can just add, one of the reasons why I wanted to reach out to him is like he's beloved by Canucks fans, right? Like you see it all the time when he's saying. There's so much reaction online, and so that's it was my first time chatting with him. Like awesome, it was an awesome guy, really generous with his time, and he wanted to talk Canucks at the end. So we talked a little bit about the Miller PD drama at the end. So that was,
there you go. That tells me he's getting back to normal. A absolute regular caller to the post-game show with Blake Price, right? Juggy and Delta.
Didn't know he was a singer back then. We didn't know who he was. He was just Juggy.
Yeah. Anyways, glad to hear he's going to be okay. Jesse Marsch, Canadian men's national team head coach. He spent a lot of time here in Vancouver, and he was pretty honest with you about games here in advance of this summer's Gold Cup. What's up there, Rob?
Yeah, I chatted with him yesterday. He was in town. One of the questions, the question I think everyone in Vancouver wants to know is are we going to get to see this team more often? Like, is this team just going to go and play in Toronto? And, I think the issue, the most commonly understood issue is that with playing in Vancouver, despite us having the best stadium in Canada, is that geography is the major issue, right? Like that's the reason why we don't get to see the Canadian national team. It's further from Europe. It's more of a pain to get to. I kind of was leading my question to him, and he said no. He said the main issue is the turf. and not getting to play on grass. And he said that, he was clear that like their players aren't too snobby to play on it, but it's hard to get other teams to agree to come here to play on turf, that they want to play on grass. And so he was mentioning that they were, he mentioned the Wrexham match, which of course was played on real grass, and they've talked to BC Place and are looking to do some things there to get grass more often. He confirmed that there will be real grass installed for the Gold Cup match that's going to be here in June. And I guess, I guess wait and see, with the World Cup coming, like we know that there's going to be grass installed. I'm sure they're going to want to, probably test some things and make sure of it. So, hopefully we see grass, not just for those handful of World Cup matches next year.
Harkening back to our conversation, we had a conversation with them, I don't know, a few months back, and
I think it was August or September.
He said the Dallas temporary turf that they brought in for Nations League. Am I right? Yeah, I think Nations League. No, for Copa was spectacular. He thought it was quite good. So, it can be,
despite other stadiums failing spectacularly on that score.
Right. So, it can be done well. It remains to be seen exactly what the semi-permanent solution is for the World Cup. It's got to be down there for a bunch of matches. But for one-offs or two-offs, if you will, if Canada wants to have a couple of matches within an international window, it can be done pretty successfully, I think.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I mean, it just, it's funny because, as Canadians, North Americans, it's not that foreign of an idea to play on artificial turf. But I mean, for the rest of the world, it must be like asking a hockey player to play on synthetic ice, right? And they're just they just are what are you talking about? Yeah. The thing I've never understood is just is it really that expensive? I guess it is. I guess it's expensive, but the rest of the world just makes it happen. It's just the cost of doing business. But it's in Canada. It's just this cost that we cannot bear, and it's unfortunate. I mean, it's a more pleasant product to watch when you're watching soccer on real grass. I think it's more pleasant visually to see real grass. Even if you're just watching on television, the entire product is better if you're watching on real grass. And I wish there was a way for them to make it happen more often. But I'm not exactly holding my breath on that it's going to happen here.
Well, at the risk of spoiling your precious party here, Williams and Price.
Precious party?
Yeah. A lot of soccer players grow up playing on surfaces that aren't pristine grass. Messi talked about how he grew up playing on an artificial surface.
Said Canada was fine.
Some of them play on asphalt or dirt, for heaven's sakes, in some of the impoverished communities around the world that produce soccer players. So it is nothing more than the preciousness of professional soccer players that need their grass.
He just said Canada's totally fine playing on it.
But around the world.
Teams. The best player in MLS last year, Evander, plays on artificial turf in Portland. So, there's a lot of
the bending over backwards, and as Rob says, the expense and everything, so that we can have grass.
You know what it's about. It's about the associations not wanting to hear about it from their club teams about injuries. If they get injured on an artificial turf in an international window, the club teams raise hellfire. And so for the associations, they're like, make my job easier, play the damn game on grass. Otherwise, we won't.
Also, I mean, I think it's you're playing. Do you need to play Canada? You don't need to play. Do you need to travel all the way here? You don't need to do it.
It's a long way. We're a long way from everywhere except the States. So,
right. Yeah. I mean, so can you get the Central American teams to come here? Yes. But all the rest, does a European club want to come all the way here and play on turf? It's just it's a mark in the maybe we don't need to do that trip category.
All right. We'll give you two the last word. Thanks for this, Rob. Much obliged.
guys.
We'll catch up next week.
Thank you.
If you are struggling with things like managing stress, anxiety, relationships, or divorce, reach out to the counselors at Advanced Counseling. Book your free initial consultation today at advancedcounseling.ca.
So Karlsson Price from the historic Wall Center, where you turn game night into a game weekend. Book your stay at the Wall. Enjoy the exclusive Karlsson Price rate. Call the hotel, 604-331-1000. Ask for our rate. Some blackout dates apply based on availability. You can text this show, 778-402-9680. Email live at karlssonprice.com. All to the Great Clips inbox. Great Clips.
It's going to be great.
This isn't great. We talked about this story yesterday, and sadly, it has come to fruition. Our friend Hart, journalist of the Daily Hive, with the report that Whitecaps designated player and midfielder Scotsman Stuart Armstrong is, in fact, heading back to England to play in the championship. Sheffield Wednesday is finalizing a deal to sign him. 32 years old. He played just 11 games for the Whitecaps. We had such high hopes for the chemistry he and his fellow Scot Ryan Gauld would have, because he's a darn good player.
No, would have. We saw it.
Yeah,
it was
fair,
great.
Fair. And it continues a larger and more disturbing trend for the Caps, Blake. Whether it was Canadian international keeper Max Crepeau, whether it was Julian Gressel, whether it was Fafa Picault, star players wanting out.
Yeah, and I think it's low-hanging fruit for people to say the uncertainty of the ownership and blah, blah, it's having an effect. I don't think it's that. If people close to the story suggest that it's a family thing. He's got a newborn baby, and they wanted to get closer to family by going back to the UK, at which point I would say, well, you signed this deal just months ago. The baby is not a surprise. The baby didn't land in your lap. So
there was a gestation period.
Yes, generally the case. So disappointing decision by Stuart Armstrong in the outset, I guess, to tease everybody with all this, and now putting the Whitecaps squarely behind the eight ball. Champions Cup is weeks away. Regular season is weeks away.
How easy or difficult is it to get a DP?
Right,
like on short order.
You needed players to begin with. Mm-hmm. Now you lose a designated player.
And a guy who's going to run your show in the midfield.
Yeah.
Terribly disappointing. We'll see what Whitecaps player procurement is able to deliver. But
you don't want to make a panic.
Vanny wasn't the only loss there, right?
No. You don't want to make a panic decision.
No.
I know there was an analytics coach that had been lost as well at the end of last season. Now his work is left behind, so there's, at least for this window, I think there's still a chance to benefit from the sharp tools that he left behind in his notebook. But they've got to make some big decisions here because they needed players anyway.
Yeah,
and now they've lost Stuart Armstrong.
Yeah. Demonstrably weaker today than they were yesterday. The BC Lions have signed CFL veteran defensive end Trey Crawford. He played 12 games for Hamilton over a couple of seasons, also in camping with Saskatchewan. We're less than 2 weeks away from CFL free agency, and time is running short to re-sign CFL leading receiver Justin McInnes. Of course, we also brought you that story about the other receivers, Alexander Hollins, Keon Hatcher, Javon Cotoy. They all have big bonuses due as soon as next week. So we'll see what new GM Ryan Rigmaiden has up his sleeve here, because I imagine you're going to hear a lot from the BC Lions in the next couple of weeks. And boy, I still want to keep Javon Cotoy, Canadian slot back with that kind of size. Very much a nice tandem with McInnes, Canadian slot back with that kind of size. Speaking of football, we've been calling him the coach, Nick Hauka, our recent intern from BCIT, because, well, he's a high school football coach. And not only that, he is from the Farhan Lalji tree of football coaches.
We'll forgive him.
Blake, how you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, guys.
You're more than welcome. So tell us about your history with Farhan, our boy.
Right. So I had the pleasure of playing for Farhan my whole high school career. I started playing in grade 10, played grade 10 to 12. I was actually one of his quarterbacks as well as a DB. Farhan was always very demanding, but a very caring, kind individual. I have no idea how that man does what he does. He's just always on the go. I don't know if the guy sleeps, to be honest.
Did you know he also worked for TSN?
Oh, I did. Yeah. I absolutely did.
Yeah.
And you know what? He was at almost every single practice. He was present in his players' lives, always caring about them as individuals, making time in his very busy schedule for us at all times. And he's a great coach. He rebuilt the New West program from the ground up and turned them into a contender. And since he's left there, they had a couple of bad years. They're on their way back now, but and I'm now part of that staff.
Good for you.
Maybe that's it, huh?
Good for you.
Well,
You're on the staff, they're on the way out.
Well, I just joined back this year, so
Okay.
I'm
You're not going to take all the credit?
No, I'm not going to take any right now. But so he's done such great things for the community. And if you look at what the community involvement in that program, it's the best that a public school does as a program right now.
Who do you like in the Super Bowl?
I see a path for both teams. My thing is Nick Sirianni cannot have one of his classic game management blunders.
Yes.
That's a big thing for me. I think I like the Eagles' defensive matchup against the Chiefs. I think Kelsey's the one guy that's going to present some issues for them. I don't think they have a linebacker that can cover him man-to-man. Yeah. Their nickel, Cooper DeJean, is more of a smaller, quick guy who's in underneath zone coverages a lot. I don't think he's a good matchup there either. So I think you double him. I think you trust Darius Slay and Quinyon Mitchell on the outside against Hollywood Brown and others, and I think you play that way. And if you don't make clock management issues and you run the ball with Saquon, I can see a path for the Eagles.
You didn't
We told you he's a coach.
You didn't address the biggest story of the Super Bowl. Who's Jason cheering for?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Hey, I think
Once
he's
an Eagle, always an Eagle. Do you have to?
No.
No?
Blood is thicker
Really?
than laundry.
brotherly love.
Wow.
On the other hand, you can say, you know what, Travis has got his. You know, he's already got a couple more than me. I lived and loved the city of Philly. I could see that going.
His wife's a Philly gal, too.
That's
they're pretty
right.
big in that town.
Yes, she's got it in her
that
lyrics.
town.
Yeah.
So can we all see the scenario now? And who's the broadcaster this year? Was the game on CBS?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't looked into that.
But Travis Kelce, game MVP, retires post-game a la Jerome Bettis, but with a marriage proposal to Taylor Swift from the Super Bowl podium in front of 100 million plus Americans.
What are the odds on that?
Imagine? Can you imagine? NFL fans would lose their minds.
Oh my goodness! We were
Now I'm
talking.
hoping for it.
I was talking with some. I was at my local yesterday and talking with a guy, and he said his daughter is 10 years old. She has taken a huge interest in football this year, in part because she's a Taylor Swift fan and has discovered Travis Kelce and football. She announced to her dad that the Chiefs are her team now, and he's like, great, and he's just loving it. I can watch football with my daughter. But we were talking, in about 30 years, if you're a single guy at a Kansas City Chiefs football game, oh my goodness, are you going to have a lot of dating options there in the stadium?
Oh, improving the
right?
ratio, yeah.
The ratio is going to be extraordinary for male Chiefs fans going forward here in terms of common interests.
Yeah, could be.
I know you're a Canucks fan as well. I want to ask you the poll question, the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. 2 years later, would you do the Horvat deal again?
Absolutely. If I could go back in time, I think I would keep Bo instead of JT, obviously with the rumors about the locker. Well, Rutherford admitted that they're true, right?
Yeah. More than rumors at this point.
Right now, I think that would be, honestly, it doesn't look great on paper, trading back for a player you moved. And as you guys were kind of saying earlier, I wonder if he wants to come back after he was treated. But I would make the move. I think you need to stabilize the locker room. I think that's a really big thing right now. You have to instill that winning positive culture, which they don't seem to have right now. I would do it 100%.
Okay.
I would bring him back.
Thank you, Nick. Appreciate all your efforts here over the last month. Wish you the best in BCIT, and you got some supporters here.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
That is Nick Hauka, who has been our intern from BCIT, also coaching at New West Secondary after all those years playing for Farhan Lalji. I don't know about you, Blake, but I woke up this morning to lots of sadness. 14 members of the U.S. figure skating community among the 60 passengers on that American Airlines jet that collided with an Army helicopter crashed into the Potomac River in Washington, D.C. Teenage skaters, their mothers, 2 Russian coaches who are now Boston-based but were world champions in their competing days. Terrible, terrible accident there. But also, I noticed that former NHL executive and Canadian World Junior Sean Simpson has passed away at age 56. He was apparently born here in Vancouver, but raised in the nation's capital. He worked for the Capitals and the Leafs in their front offices before starting a media career in Ottawa at TSN 1200 and more recently on the Comin' In Hot podcast with Brent Wallace and Jason York here on the Nation Network. I had been a guest on his show several times over the years, and I know we got a lot of people in the NHL community and the hockey community mourning the loss of Sean Simpson.
And Brent and Jason did an episode of Coming In Hot this morning to talk about it and talk about Sean. So if you're interested in that, go check it out on the Nation Network and hear their thoughts.
Poll question results from Wednesday. Do you believe Canucks ownership will allow both JT Miller and Elias Paterson to be traded? Yes or no? What did the people say, Blake?
No. People said no.
Percentage?
70.
57 on 1,700 votes. Colin and Planning, a very cynical no from me. They should both be gone, but I think the owner has his pets. Adam, nope. I don't think Francesco will let them take that far of a step back. I almost think that was the point of JR dropping bombs he did. He was trying to get public opinion on his side. And then Raging Bull is if their interest is in the long-term success of this team and not just focused on we need to make the playoffs no matter what for that playoff money. Errors and omissions from Wednesday's program. Lawrence Gilman, small error, called it an 8-year deal for JT Miller. It was a 7-year deal for JT Miller, and there's 5 of those left. Anything to report from the inbox or from your side of the ledger, Mr. Price?
No, nothing on it. No.
Then we'll say thank you for joining us and connecting with the program. Much appreciated. Please do subscribe to YouTube and wherever you get your assorted channels, YouTube and wherever you get your podcast. Follow on social. That's X, Insta, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. On many of those platforms at noon Pacific time weekdays. And please do support the community sponsors you hear us talking about. Keep it local.